I would like to start with a warm welcome to everyone and thanking you all for being here today. My name is Maaike Slotema and I am the Grants Acquisition Portfolio Manager of Asia Pacific of the Global Evergreening Alliance. And today I am representing the Landscape Partnership Asia as your moderator. And this is the second webinar in a series of a part of the Asian Drylands Knowledge Hub. The purpose of today's webinar is to explore the role of drylands restoration in climate change adaptation and mitigation, and to hear from experts about their experiences. After the presentation of the experts, we will also have a short panel discussion where we can have your additional questions answered. So now, first of all, I would like to give the floor to our first speaker, who is Mr. Boris Erg. And he is a director of the International Union for Conservation and Nature, IUCN, at the Eastern Europe and Central Asia Regional Office. And Mr. Erg will present on the importance of drylands restoration for climate change adaptation and mitigation, and will specifically give examples for Central Asia. So, Mr. Boris Erg, the floor is yours right now.
Thank you, Maaike. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks a lot for inviting IUCN to this important webinar. As being said, I'll just give some provide some insight into drylands in Central Asia and climate change and what IUCN does, and then few ongoing and upcoming projects that might also help entice some discussion. Okay, so yeah, the presentation is about the role of the dryland restoration from climate change mitigation and adaptation in Central Asia. And I was greatly supported in preparing this presentation by my colleague Alexandra Ibrahimova, who is our ecosystem management project officer and is pretty much hands-on our activities in Central Asia. Just for those who don't know IUCN, IUCN is a membership organization with around 1,400 members, member organizations, including states, governments, non-governmental organizations, and indigenous peoples organizations alike. We just open to subnational authorities. It might be interesting detail as we return from the World Conservation Congress in Marseille. So the World Conservation Congress brought around 10,000 participants, and drylands and dryland management was a very important topic there. And agriculture as a whole, or land use and land management, is becoming much more prominent in IUCN's work. And in particular in light of climate change. But there are 6 commissions associated with IUCN on species protected areas, ecosystem management, environmental, social policy. So I invite you all to look into, and if interested, of course, you're most welcome to join. Now moving to Central Asia, the way how define Central Asia or Middle Asia could be is 5 countries in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, and we know that this area is the largest contiguous grazed area in the world. So in that sense, it's very important. We do feel that hasn't been looked into or explored in full, in particular in terms of rangeland management, dryland management, restoration opportunities, and conservation. It is when we speak about drylands, they're critically important, of course, for sustaining livelihoods in Central Asia, especially local communities, rural communities, and where there is a portion of the poor. And then in Central Asia, of course, there is a very long history of pastoralism, which traces back 8,000 years ago. And of course, that there is a lot of value associated to rangeland resources in Central Asia. The World Bank estimated that the value of rangeland resources in Kazakhstan is 825 million US dollars, and we, for example, in Kyrgyzstan, there was also another estimate that the rangeland herds are of value of 1 billion US dollars. So those are just some of the estimates in terms of monetary values, but of course that social and environmental values of rangeland in Central Asia is even higher. And we know that of course that these ecosystems in Central Asia that they host a globally important biodiversity. Some of the most iconic species occur in these landscapes, and that there is a potential, of course, for a greenhouse gases sinks in sequestration in those landscapes. IUCN works most directly on saiga conservation and goiter gazelle conservation, but of course the iconic snow leopard is occurring in high altitude dryland. So for that reason, for example, drylands are also very important for us. But as I mentioned before, this has an extremely high social value. Because a large number of communities, local communities, rural communities, and part of them is rural poor, of course, that they heavily depend on drylands in Central Asia. Threats are numerous when it comes to drylands in Central Asia. We know that certainly the climate change is one of the biggest, but it's not just about climate change. Of course, new systems are such that are somehow inherited from the Soviet Union, where that part of land which is agriculture, that is which accounts for around 8% of the total land in Central Asia. It's intense agriculture, which is heavily dependent on water, pretty much monocultures. So it's also that the way how land is managed and how agriculture is practiced, of course, that has an impact on socioeconomic patterns. But climate change is a very important driver. It's a very important threat in the region. And we know that Central Asia is a big region, of course, and it's very diverse in that it's mountainous in the east, it's getting lowland in the west, of course, north and south. There are differences. So in terms of a climate change and climate change patterns, they differ across the region with a bit more rainfall in the north in Kazakhstan, or northern rangeland in Kazakhstan, with less rainfall in the south, so making it even more dry. So that differs across the region. So it has to be looked into in more detail. And what matters a great deal is that but the estimates are that 1/3 of glaciers have already melted in the mountains in the east, which is pretty much a Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. So that's also another important factor, and certainly one major threat for the region. So all that actually exacerbates somehow these. Coupled with land use practices, it leads to increased land degradation. So that's something to be looked into. And the land degradation neutrality initiative helped understand a little bit what are the patterns and how is land being degraded, and where is degraded land in Central Asia. Of course, all that has a massive impact on communities in Central Asia. Certainly on economies, and so, but major impact is on local communities which suffer basically from land degradation. Yeah. So what IUCN did in 2020, last year, so we introduced the global standard for nature-based solutions. And the global standard is an umbrella standard approach to addressing major societal challenges, including water security and food security, climate change, certainly, land degradation, health, biodiversity, and so. And the global standard speaks to actually managing or protecting biodiverse high ecosystems in areas, managing in a more integrated way, and restoring degraded land. So that's the global standard tries to bring together different approaches to either protecting or managing or restoring degraded land. And it works under several principles, and they are social, environmental, and economic. So actions that have that have a positive impact on environment, on socioeconomic fabric is valued and potentially can be treated as a nature-based solution. This is the impact chain in a way, as I mentioned already. So it is both to conserve, integrate, or manage in a more integrated way. So manage better and to restore. And this picture that we see here is actually from the Aral Sea bed, where there are massive restoration projects in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan alike. One issue that's relevant for Central Asia as well is that there is a need for more data. So there is a need for research. That's what we are seeing, and apart from data, there is a need for more availability of information. So that research can really help understand what are the dryland patterns, what are the climate change patterns, and basically how can we then use that information for improving a dryland management and restoration as part of it. So IUCN is providing a number of tools, of course, and our approach to restoration is primarily landscape scale. So what we do is that we look at the landscape as a whole, and then we are trying to understand what are the options. The way how we work is pretty much a consultative process where we are then based on data, based on science, and in consultation with interested parties, stakeholders, that we are looking for opportunities or for options to restore degraded land. And it can be, there are different approaches, as you can see here. It can be wide scale restoration, it can be a mosaic restoration, and so on. Of course, then I won't be going into much detail here, but it's certainly that there are different approaches to restoring land. Yeah, what matters is that it's a landscape scale approach. Yeah. And so ROAM is one of the methodologies that we use. It stands for Restoration Opportunities Assessment Methodology. And then based on the principles that I mentioned already, so we are looking for restoration that's socially, economically, and ecologically viable. It can be applied even at the regional level. So normally is doing it's countrywide, or it's a site specific or landscape specific approach. Then we are looking there are different types of restoration that are available, including silvopastoral systems and so. And we are also, that's one of the major criteria is that we look into the carbon sequestration opportunities, and we try to calculate that and even monetize that, so to see what is the value of a restoration initiative in terms of GHG sequestration. And then, of course, that the one major part of it is who are the stakeholders and basically how they view and how they see, how they benefit from a particular restoration initiative. Of course, that scale matters, and what we are hearing these days is that action has to be taken at scale. We know that, so we are not going away from site-based initiatives, of course, but at the end of the day, what matters is that that particular land is being restored. But the intervention has to be at scale. I mean, the extent of impacts of both climate change and other drivers is so massive and then happens at pace, so that our response also has to be at scale. Yeah, and that's what we heard, for example, at the World Conservation Congress. You know, that GEF, GCF, they were there, that the number of businesses were there, IFIs and financial institutions as well, and saying that basically they are now looking into options really to respond at scale. So this is just a couple of ongoing upcoming initiatives in Central Asia. So one major is of the World Bank. It's called Resilient. There are projects in Kazakhstan, and if I'm not mistaken, Kyrgyzstan has kicked off as well. And there are plans, of course, for rolling out a massive project in Uzbekistan as well. So Resilient looks into dryland management, looks into restoration opportunities with respect to communities and support local communities and their practices. One project just around the corner, it's a GEF. It's called a Global Coordination Project for the Dryland Sustainable Landscape Impact Program. So it consists of 11 child projects, of which one is in Central Asia, in Kazakhstan. So the project will look into actually how to maximize the effectiveness of all the child projects on dryland management around the globe. They're around the globe, so how to maximize their effectiveness. So under one umbrella, and that's the coordination. This is the global coordination project. And then last not least, of course, there is a big project, important project in pipeline in Uzbekistan called FOLOR. It works under GEF as well. It's a forest land use resources impact program. So we'll be looking into wheat production, wheat value chain, and in particular the wheat production impact on ecosystems and communities, and how to improve, how to innovate when it comes to wheat production, but also how to look into a wider landscape and to see what are the impacts and how these innovative practices are actually impacting ecosystems and communities, and where restoration can happen, or where more integrated, more ecologically sound practices could be applied. And I stop here with this beautiful landscape that we all aim at preserving in Central Asia. The region is really blessed with I would say both natural and cultural values. So we work very hard on supporting partners in Central Asia, preserve them. Thank you very much once again, and большое спасибо.
Thank you so much, Mr. Boris Erg, for your very insightful presentation. It's very much appreciated. I saw some questions coming through the question box. And one of the questions is that we would like to get your thoughts on how can both the governments and local partners in Central Asia ensure the sustainability of mainly large-scale restoration projects over a longer period of time?
Well, but that would require a bit more time. It's just yesterday, I also participated in another interesting workshop on that, where also some examples where lands, some nature important land hasn't been preserved. One important thing in Central Asia, it's about policy mainstreaming. So we really have to make sure that, well, that's when it comes to government, certainly. So we really have to make sure that all what we discuss here, so that's sound land management, but also opportunities for land restoration are being mainstream into policies. Yeah, so policies they have to recognize, you know, and then it starts from policies, of course, then translate into funding and institutional frameworks and implementation. So that's That's number one. And when it comes to international organizations, then it's certainly to try to provide support to that end. Yeah. So finally, when it comes to communities and local partners, so their knowledge of particular issues on the ground, it's critically important. And what matters is that they are fully participating in any discussion and any dialogue, where policies are being shaped, where funding is being a funnel, and when particular activities on the ground are being planned. Yeah. And last not least, certainly to fully participate in the implementation of activities on the ground.
Well, thank you once more, Mr. Boris Erg, and thank you for sharing your insights. Then
you're welcome.
On to the next speaker. This is Mr. Ego Lemos, and he's the Executive Director of Permatil. And Mr. Egos Lemos will be presenting on locally based solutions to restoring drought-prone areas in Timor-Leste. And yeah, Mr. Ego Lemos, the floor is yours right now.
Thank you, everyone. So the context of Timor-Leste. So Timor-Leste is a small nation which is only recently achieved the restoration of its independence in May 2002. It has a total population of 1.2 million people, and one of the fastest growing population in the world, while also having clearly limited natural resources. So Timor-Leste has faced various challenges during the reconstruction period, following the 99 vote for independence. So it has environmental degradation problem, which is threatening the nation's biodiversity. So because of Timor-Leste has been colonized by Portuguese for 450 years, and Indonesia for 24 years. So, and during the colony or occupation, so a lot of environmental degradation happened during that time. So there are many factors contributing to this degradation. And one of the factors is its understanding and consists on various levels. So, for instance, the farmers doing traditional practices, slash and burn, shifting cultivation. So it's impacting on the degradation of the land, and also many of the natural springs dries out. So that's the problem that Timor-Leste has faced so far. So Permatil is it's a national organization that has been established in 2001. So is extend for permaculture Timor-Leste. So during the establishment of this organization, Permatil has done intervention in various areas using the concept of and practice of permaculture, which is emphasized permaculture ethics, earth care, people care, and fair share. So the permaculture system uses a holistic approach to everyday life, including homes, clean water, food, health, education, cooperative, work, waste management, energy, aquaculture, river, forests, wildlife, and etc. So the permaculture system can be applied to both rural as well as the urban areas. So the Permatil have 4 priorities. One is water restoration and conservation. This program is we working directly with local community across Timor-Leste. So the reason why we focus on the water restoration, because as the earlier presentation, Timor-Leste is a very dry and also lots of forest destruction. So that's why many natural springs dries out. So many local community, especially women and children, they walking miles and miles searching for water. So therefore, Permatil take initiative to focus on water restoration and conservation to revive natural springs so that community can access to running water all year round. So right now, we've been working in 170 plus water rehabilitation and conservation project, which is undertaking so far. So during the water restoration, one of the activities we're doing is we create like a artificial reservoir, or it's like an earth dam to capture the rainwater and infiltrate into the ground. So that one is to reduce erosion and flooding, and as well as to revive the natural spring down below the reservoir. So apart from that, we also working with community to planting trees, variety of trees, but the trees that we're planting is the trees type of trees that are for retaining water and conserving soil, um, and we don't promote like industrial uh, trees that suck lots of nutrient and also take lots of water. So we recommend to the community first is to protect their natural forests or native forests, and second we're planting trees that helping to conserving the natural springs. And also if I could right now I'm in the middle in the campsite where this site, one of the example that we're working 1.5 years ago, which is an area where very dry, and every year people burning the field. But after Permatil doing intervention, now we create so many 62 ponds or water retention system. Now we have about many new springs starting to revive again. So therefore, as you see on the pictures, so this is one of the example. We're working with local community to revive the natural reservoir, and we even create a new like artificial so that we could capture the rainwater. And second priority, we're working with youth. We call permaculture youth in action. So this program is helping youth to lead the way for sustainable futures. So far we have trained about 5,200 youth across the country. So right now we're in the middle of the permaculture youth camp. So about 428 youth right now been trained in water conservation, aquaculture, horticulture, compost toilet, agroforestry, and also cooking. So, and this is one of the example of you see this is the camp where we every 2 years biannual Permatil organize the youth camp. So in purpose to train more youth in doing water conservation and environmental protection activities. So the third priority is Permatil also working with Ministry of Education to include permaculture into school garden. So it's called Permaculture Gardening in School program. So this program is trying to create the school garden in the primary school so that the school can be a living laboratory for the local community to learn about local context. And also the school garden can be utilized to help the teachers uh, apply the the method, the teaching method that shifts from passive learning inside the classroom into an active learning outside classroom. So this program is actually now it's integrated in the national curriculum of Timor-Leste, and it's become a compulsory subject for every primary school. So now we have 254 school garden has been established, and the beneficiary is 42,000 plus kids. And so this is one of the example that some of the school garden, they produce a variety of vegetables that can contribute to school feeding, as well as, you know, the kids can take the knowledge back to their home with their family to establish a home garden. And also kids learning one of the lesson that school nursery, and every year kids taking a variety of trees to planting around their community to restore their land. And the fourth priority, Promatil also have global resources, which is we have a book called the Tropical Permaculture Guidebook, which is international edition. It's called A Gift from Timor-Leste. You can find online. Just go to permatil.global.org. You will find this book, and this book is it's online, open source, so everyone can access. So, and we have English edition, and also we have the Tetung edition. So far it's been downloaded 100,000 more plus chapter, and in 173 countries so far. So I think this is my presentation. So if you have any question, please do. Thank you very much. I'll get back to you. And this is the book. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ego Lemos. We actually got some questions in the chat box, and I'm gonna ask those questions. So there was a question from John, and John asks, among the following strategies you have mentioned, which one do you think is considered as the best practice that can be adapted and implemented by other countries?
Thank you. For us, the best practice is creating artificial reservoir or dam in the upstream areas. So this in order to capture the rainwater and infiltrate to the ground, so that the soil can be as a sponge to keep the moisture, and the water will slowly feeding into natural creeks and goes into springs. And in my experience, this method is very fast, and just within 1 year to 2 years, the whole area is changing. The vegetation is changing because water is in the ground. So you can call a water recharge system. So actually we create a system where the rainwater can infiltrate to the ground. So we don't use any plastic or cement, just purely just straight to the earth. So we channel all the what's it called, the water channel. We also channel into the artificial reservoir, so that we slow down the water flow, as well as we reduce the erosion, and also reduce the landslide.
Thank you very much. And there's another question from Rhea, and she asks, what are those recommended, what would you recommend as species for water restoration and conservation?
Yes, thank you. Uh, we have in Timor, we have many variety of species. Uh, One is banyan trees. I don't know if it's mostly in tropical areas, banyan tree. It's a really good for growing along the way of the creeks. And also we have few different nuts and also pandana. Pandana, it's a plant that people can use for making traditional mat. Also, I cannot remember the name in English, but also we growing some. Uh, I I do have in Tetum in my language, but I don't have in English. But I do recommend like a teak tree. I don't. Maybe it's probably not in have in Europe, but teak trees is growing in tropical countries. It's a kind of hardwood. So any kind of hardwood, do not planting around the water source, because the hardwood, they will take all the nutrient out of the ground, and they will take all the water out of the ground, and they're killing all the others plant around them. So, so important to do not planting the hardwood around your water source. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And then there is a question from Kit. And this question is, how do you deal with pests in your permaculture gardens?
Yeah, in terms of pests, so in the school garden program, we only teach the kids using mechanical pest control. And also, if also planting variety of plant, then it's called gill. So the that's a different color of plant and different smell of the plant. So we planting in the garden where it's combining, so that you how say, you trick the pests, so that the pests do not attack your plant. So it's like a mixed crop. But if necessary, we do use organic pesticide, which is made out of the local plant, and it can be a bit bitter, it can be itchy, but it's not killing the pest, but it's just to reduce pest reproduction.
Okay, thank you very much. And Dr. Lemos, thank you for joining us from the field in Timor-Leste. From the ground, that's very much appreciated. Our third speaker of today is Dr. Huria Judy, and she is a senior scientist at the Center for International Forestry Research, who will be presenting on climate change adaptations and human migration strategies in Central Asia. So I would like to give the floor to you, Mrs. Huria Judy.
Thank you very much, Mike. Very happy to be here. So today I would like actually to share some work C4 ICRAF was doing in Tajikistan. And this work was around understanding how remittances and migration are linked to the landscape, linked to restoration or to the management of the landscape. I would like to start with something which is not maybe just related to Central Asia, but it's related to the way how we think about migration. So we looked at the existing studies or the existing analysis of migration. And what we found is really interesting is that actually migration is one of these very one of these topics where you have very different views or very different narratives, what we call narratives, like different stories about migration. So you will find stories where you can read that migration is actually an adaptive strategy. This is an adaptive pathway. But you would also find some narratives who will tell you actually migration is because they are failing to adapt locally. We also have stories about migration as a diversification of households' income, of household livelihoods. But at the same time, we have also narrative telling us that migration is because people cannot actually deal with resource scarcity and with power structures in their societies or their communities. We have also stories telling us that migration is forced, but we have stories and narratives telling us that migration is a choice or can be a choice. Then we have the issues of equalities, and we have stories of migration which can reinforce existing social inequalities, but also some stories particularly related to gender, which are telling us that migration can be an emancipation and can create ways to emancipate. So this slide, actually, I just wanted to start with it because there is not an agreement about what migration is and what migration means. And in this kind of field of tension, we actually wanted to bring one more issue, which is the missing link between migration and ecosystems, the missing link between looking at migration from the environmental point of view. Of course, there is a lot of discussion about migration and climate change, but we don't really see a lot of work looking at how the impact of remittances is in ecosystems or in landscapes, and also how the impact of remittances can shift the dependencies on natural resources, and what does this mean for different social groups. So now I'm moving to Central Asia, particularly to Tajikistan. So why Tajikistan? Tajikistan has one specificity, which is the high dependency on remittances. So Tajikistan is actually one of the most remittances dependent countries in the world. And we have here some data from 2019 showing that Tajikistan's, that the share of migrant transfer from Russia only is about 30% of Tajikistan's GDP. And this was actually higher in the earlier years, but there were some changes in the policy of migration, which kind of reduced a bit from 50% to 30%. And this represents a huge amount of money in absolute terms. So now I would just like give you a little bit of the context of the study we did. And this study was done with a collaboration with the University of Central Asia, particularly the Mountain Societies Research Institute, which is in Khorog in Pamir in Tajikistan. And we wanted to understand what is going on, what is happening in terms of migration. So we had two sites. One is in Penjikent in kind of the north, and one is in the Pamir, in Batang particularly. And what we did is we did a household survey. We talked also with different people in focus group discussions. We talked with farmers, with women, with men, with youth groups migrating, and we wanted to understand what is going on. So here I'm starting very quickly with some kind of very kind of figures of migration. So in our survey, we found that 46% of households had at least one migrant. And we found that 78% of those migrants are male. This is very interesting because the statistics of previous years or previous periods are saying that women are not migrating. But what we found actually is now there is a lot of female migration. A lot of female migration is internal migration, but still we have about like 20% of women still migrating internationally. This is because there are so many reasons for it. This is also because the demand for migrant skills is getting different. Also, the destination of the migrant is different. So a lot of men are still migrating to Russia, but a lot of women are migrating to the Middle East and to the other countries. This is because the skills needed are different. We also found that the remittances coming from international migration are still the ones who are the most important and the highest. When we looked at the household and how those remittances are important for their income source, we found that more than half of the household claimed that remittances is the most important income source. We had about 28% where it's the second important income source, and 40% which is the third most important income source. And we also found that most people actually are perceiving that this is not going to change in the next years. So remittances will still be the most important source of income in this region, in these two regions. Now maybe coming a little bit more dipping in what are people doing with remittances. And what we see here is that 82% of the household we talk with are using remittances to pay for all types of agriculture inputs. When you go a bit deeper, we see that those input includes maybe the most important aspect for our discussion today is that we have 22% of the income going to tree planting and 20% going to buy livestock. These two things are interesting because in terms of landscape restoration, in terms of adaptation, they have a different impact. So we are having investment in restoring the landscape with planting trees, but we are having the same amount of money which is used to buy livestock, which we know is a big issue in terms of land degradation. Not the livestock at itself, but the livestock, the way livestock is managed. And we know that pastures in this region are very important, but at the same time, we know that the high number of animals is causing degradation in the region. So here we have two different ways people are using their remittances, and these two different ways are having two different impacts on the landscape. So here we see that remittances are, they are used in different ways, and so we need to take in account very, very clearly how they are used in terms of if we're thinking about the adaptation of the region in future climate change. We know that livestock is a very important adaptive strategy, not only in this region, in many, many of the dryland regions in the world, in Africa too. So this is something we really need to deal with when we think about adaptation, because this is the strategy people would think of because of their identity, because of their tradition. But then what does this mean in terms of adapting to future changes? So again, going a bit deeper in the tree planting activities, we saw that actually in both landscapes, 80% had planted trees in the last 5 years, which also has which give us a very interesting starting point to think about restoration. I am saying this because I work also in different regions in the world where we don't have this amount of people engaging in planting trees. We know that actually agroforestry is a very old system in this region, as a lot of orchards and a lot of nuts are coming from this region. So while we are having an issue in terms of restoring these landscapes, I just want to highlight here that we are having a potential too, because people have the tradition and the knowledge to plant trees, but we need to figure out how to improve at the landscape level and then at the policy level to make it something which is kind of protected or kind of upscaled to more of the regions in the country. One of the interesting things we found regarding the use of remittances is that the households who get remittances actually are using less wood fuel, which is an interesting result, because here also we are looking at how the impact of the remittances in the landscape, and we know that energy is one of the biggest issues in this region, and also particularly in Tajikistan. And there are some places where there is nothing at all to be used beside, there is no wood and no shrubs to use for the wood fuel. So here we see that there is a transition happening in terms of energy, but then how this will impact the landscape and how we could kind of enhance this kind of policies which will move the transition from wood fuel to other energy sources. So I am going to stop here, and I hope that if you have any questions and I'm going to finish my presentation with some key messages, but if you have more questions, please feel free to ask them. So what I wanted to show with this presentation actually is that we cannot plan for adaptation or for climate change, and we cannot plan to restore landscapes if we think about landscape as something which is static, where there is no human mobility. Migration is everywhere, but here in this case, we have a very clear trend of migration. So if we are going to think about landscapes, if we are going to think about restoring landscapes, we need to take in account this, the human mobility. So here what is important if we do that is that we have different ways how migration is impacting the landscape. We have the demographic change dimension, as I showed in my slide. If we have most of the migrant are men, what does this mean in terms of restoration projects? We saw some projects in the region who really were great project in community managing their landscapes. But what happens is that they work mostly with men in terms of capacity building, in terms of the technical and the financial, the access to technical and financial means. And when this migrant, when the young men became migrant, when they leave, we have a problem of knowledge. We have a problem of knowledge transfer because they leave, and then you have villages where they are only women or most women who don't have the access and who don't have the knowledge. So here we need to rethink our target groups, and we need to rethink our capacity building systems and make it a kind of more gender sensitive or gender responsive in terms of places where we know that the migration is going to happen, and the migration is mostly a male migration. Also, migration and remittances influence the household economy, and they change the dependency on natural resources, like, for instance, here the example of the wood fuel. And what does this mean, and how can we account for that, and how can we enhance this kind of trend and make the trend something which is resilient or also sustainable for the future, not just a case of remittances use, because this is the other issue we have with remittances. When the migration is not successful, or when the policies regarding migration are changing, like they did in Russia, then you have all the migrants coming back home, and then you have to, even if you gain some kind of transition in terms of energy, you might go back again to the situation which was before. So here we need to think more about sustainability of the future, and what does the remittances dependency mean. The migration also can be, as we saw here, can be an adaptation. This is absolutely clear, but depending on how people are using remittances, it can also create what we call maladaptive pathways. Maladaptive pathways mean that we are adapting maybe for the current situation, but we are not adapting to the larger or to the future changes. Which means, for instance, when you invest in livestock, you might increase your income and decrease your vulnerability for the short term. But if you don't have natural resources to use, if your pastures are degraded, then for the future you have a maladaptive situation rather than an adaptive one. We also need to think about the role of the diaspora. How can we mobilize the diaspora to invest and engage more in restorative agriculture, agroforestry? We know that the diaspora in the world, generally, there is this kind of place attachment and all this feeling of nostalgia to their own country, to their own region. And if we have this combined with an important transfer of remittances, as we see here, and I want to highlight that those are just, the official transfers, but there are a lot of other ways to transfer money. Numbers actually are higher than the ones we have, like the official ones. So how can we capitalize on this, and how can we work with the diaspora to make sure that the engagement in their landscape is sustainable and also an adaptive engagement? And also, we really need policy recommendations. We need to actually create or influence policies that increase the integration of migration and human mobility for sustainable management of natural resources, and particularly for the adaptation to climate change. Thank you very much for listening to me, and happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Huria Judy, for giving a very insightful and interesting focus of the research. It's very much appreciated, and thanks again. From now, we will move on to our final speaker of today. That's Dr. Chai. And Dr. Chai is an advisor at the Pollution Control Department of Thailand. And Dr. Chai will be presenting on the role of greenhouse gas emissions offsets and the ecological restoration in dryland ecosystems in Thailand and in association of Southeast Asian nations. So, Dr. Chai, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. Good morning from Thailand, but other places, maybe afternoon, evening, I don't know. My name is Virachai Tanpipat. You can just call me Chai. I'm an advisor of the Director General of Pollution Control Department of Thailand, and also a senior expert at the Faculty of Forestry. And then my talk today will be about the role of greenhouse gas emission offset and ecological restoration in dryland ecosystem in Thailand and perhaps ASEAN. Okay, a little bit. So this is my content. And then this is just the overview of this year, what is going on with the climate change. We have set many records in this year. So this is just the example to see what's going on around the world. In July was the warmest month since we have the recorded about the temperature, and then we have COVID, so it's like a double blow. This is also another example to see from the record we keeping that you can see that I don't know, in the past 20 years or so is above normal, the temperature. Okay, so it's keep going, and then it will get warmer and warmer, I guess, and we have to try to cope with it. And then this is a restoration and reforestation the way. It might not stop it, because I think we already passed the point of no return. So it just help to reduce the impact, I guess. And the future of this article saying that the future of forests will depend on the action we taking today. I like it. So it's just like to say that the situation is really urgent now. We have to do something. Okay. And then from the satellite perspective, when they look at the South America, the high deforestation rate is occurring there. But I hope that they can do much better than that, because Amazon forest is very, very important for the world. And this is showing that from FAO that the annual net change, you can see that Asia is not that bad, but in South America is very, very bad. Okay, so need to do something about it. But actually, what happened in South America will affect us in Asia as well. Everywhere is connected. Okay, something happened somewhere in the world, it will connect us one way or the other. And focus to ASEAN, Southeast Asia region. Look at this. This is the data from Landsat that Matt Hansen working with the Google engine to come up with this, comparing his algorithm is a global perspective, not local, because some when happened in Indonesia a couple of years ago, or in Cambodia, that this data set came out, and the government of Indonesia and Cambodia saying that it's not true because they have higher resolution. This is like 30-meter resolution with global global algorithm, deforestation algorithm. So it's kind of not very detailed if you look at the particular area. So in general, we can say that for Southeast Asia, it's we having the problem with deforestation. So this data set, you can look at it and see the different from year to year since I think 2000, because of but the Lancet can look further, but the data set start at the 2000, the year 2000. You can see the gain and the loss, and some classification also make a difference as well, because different country have a different definition of forest. So mainly, maybe we can use in the middle ground, we can use FAO as a definition of forest. So we have problem here in Southeast Asia. This is just to show that the greenhouse gas emission, this is the example of carbon dioxide. This is not count the land use and carbon change that we're talking about. This is just the burning of fossil fuel only. So you can see that Indonesia is a bit higher, actually just because of the population. Okay. And then when you look at the per capita, then it's come down. Okay. It just depends how you look at the statistics. This is just the 10 country in ASEAN, okay, in Southeast Asia. And for Thailand, okay, we last year say that for the Thailand update, that the national determined contributions, we still doing it as a business as usual scenario, okay. And then during this 20 years, no, 10 years, let's say 10 years, from 2021 to 2030, we will do according to these adaptation components. But we have 6 priority sectors. But for this talk, I focus only for the two priorities that we have been doing: water resources management sector and the natural resources management sector. For Thailand, we identify that the last year, 2020, we have forest 128 million acres, and then the watershed area that we consider to be restored first, because that's as Igor said, that it's very important to restore the watershed, okay, to get more water. Then we identify that 28.5 million acre out of 33.6 million acre are in good condition, and the degraded and deforestation is 15% out of those. So we have a program to try to restore those. This is the example, the way to restore a deforestation area. Before we doing something else, we have to put it back to what it was. So like again, Igor says that the improved soil moisture, we're doing the similar thing. Here we're doing the check dams, but we doing it so many, maybe too quick, I don't know. We didn't look at the impacts if we put back this moisture in those areas that quick. But we don't know that when we build the check dams, it might change the way a water flow in that particular area, in that mountainous area. So we don't know the effect yet. But this is the one that the system, the thing that we're doing and turn out to be good so far. So we increase the soil's moisture, we increase the soil's condition, and then we try to create the wet belt in case of us. we use banana because banana is the contain a lot of water. If you see banana, that means the area is very humid, okay, and good. And then we try to transform agricultural practice, the old one, into agroforestry. So mix up more than like only monoculture. So changing, and then you have to select particular species. The national park, the Department of National Park, Wildlife and Plant Conservation came up with a book of what species that can be restored, used to do the reforestation or restore the land. That like a local species, but they have like maybe 100, more than 100 species in that handbooks. So I don't remember all of them, but then you can look it up. And then we try to create a water system to hold more water. And then we let in a way, we also have let the natural regeneration take place because we are in the tropical area. We're lucky to have to be in the tropical area, so it can regenerate itself. If the forest got degraded, deforestation happened, but nobody take a look. I mean, go disturb it for 5 years. Let's just say you go back there, you don't remember it. That's what the old practice, slash and burn, rotation crops doing, and they have that before in Thailand or in Laos. Similar practice. They're doing this practice, the rotation crop within like 11 plots. So they use different 11 years. Now it's reducing to 7 to 5 and to 3. It depends on the areas. But this slash and burn practice with the rotation crop, we are trying to reduce it. So, but the important thing that we need to do is that we have to generate the income for the communities. They have to be sustainable with, when you're talking here sustainable, we need to have the benefit of income for them to feed themselves as well. So then we need to have enough water supply. We need to do this tree forest type and full benefit practice to generate incomes to the community. Because we looked in Thailand, we think that if you can have many programs, but if the local people have not enough incomes, it's not sustainable. When the money from the project ran out, is done, and the same thing go back again, and they have to go into the forest. They have to cut down the tree, light up more fires in the forest. So it's we have, if you want to break that cycle, we need to do something with the income to the local. Okay, and this is the example that if we not doing anything much, we just leave it. In 3 years, it's come back. Okay, first year 2018 on the left, the middle one 2019, and then 2020 in the same month. So we can compare. You can look at the house. This we not do anything much. We just plant a cup of banana in the area. And this is the example of the communities. We trying to do this. Currently, it's around 1,700 communities in Thailand. And we do this as along with we call it community-based water management. But now we're trying to combine community-based fire and water management. It has to go together. It's appear, and maybe the fact that if we have more water, we have less fires. And then fire is one of the main causes that make the degradation in the Southeast Asia. And some places also happen deforestation from fire. So if we have this community-based fire and water management in place and can generate enough income, when you have a sustained water supply, then you can have the sustained food and economy. But then not just have that, you have to find a market for them as well, to sell their product that they produce. So then people in the forest have to be living in the harmony. Okay, and then we also try to put some small system when we have the check dam. If it's a big one, a little bigger one, we try to generate the electricity for that particular village. Okay, and it showed that for this particular community for year, this is Lat Palot in the western forest of Thailand, they can generate the income from whatever they can make to hunt up to 300,000 US per year, which is a lot for the community. And we also using the technology. We use the map, we use GPS, we use the satellite image, we use topographic map to teach the people that in order to really restore your land back or doing some good restoration, you have to understand your land. You have to understand the water system in your area. So when you understand your area well, your landscape well, you can have a better plan to restore them. So this is just the idea to see that the another place, this is up north in northern Thailand in Chiang Rai province. They also has a problem with the drought, with the forest fires. And now, according to you follow the plan that we have been done, then they have conserve. I mean, like try to conserve the watershed area, restore the stream system with the check dams. But we built like 2,800 check dams, but we don't know the effect in the future yet. But for now, it seems to be okay that we have higher moisture in the area. And then we whenever we have a chance, we will do the reforestation by planting trees. We also try to, since we have the forest fire problem, we try to connect a fire break. And in these particular areas are 112 kilometers. And when you do this fire break, you get some funding from the government. So you can hire local people to do it as well as participation, participatory from the people. And then we also concerned about the clean water that the people have to drink. So we in some village we have to install the good water filter for them. Okay, and then in the northeastern Thailand, one community, they now export the drinking water, which is like, wow, it's along Mekong River, so they have a lot of water supply, so they can do that. Another, this is the same area in Chiang Rai. You can see that long before, this is the same area. We have a lot of deforestation, but now the tree is coming back, and then you have to change. We do the change the how they plant the trees. Let's say we change to crash crop, which is in this particular area we do a tea and coffee, which can generate incomes to the communities. And with the average is 40,000 US per year per group, which is a lot as well. And then when they have enough income, they happy and they don't go and cut down the tree. Okay. And then we also have to do this agroforestry practice to reduce the household expenses, which is also the number that has been corrected is the 300,000 US per year. And then we also increase income. So we increase both ways. And the challenges and takeaway message, we have to achieve those goals that had been set and agreed. That's one thing I don't know. I'm not sure that we set very high bar. How can we do that? You know, and then we have to reduce the greenhouse emission, and we have to create more things. But the problem is that after the COVID-19, many countries have the economic recessions. What they're gonna do? They will do the same? I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think they have to do something with the economy first, and then where the money will come from for the restoration. That's going to be a big question after this COVID-19 problem that we are facing. And we have to understand that what are really going on for the climate change. So it's not, we don't really understand what the effect really are, not yet, I don't think. And we have to be resilient and adaptable to that. I believe that we as a human being is the most adaptable animal species, let's say that, in the world. That's why we survive for so long. But not all of us, if there's some big like a climate extreme happens, I can cope with that. This is, we have to build the resilience and go into the adaptation more. Okay, and then how can we pass along our conservation idea and the preservation culture to our children, to the next generation, that will be sustained in the future. And we have to create a green society, a sustainable society, in order to make it better. And we don't leave no one behind. It's easy to say, but difficult to do. But we have to try to do that as well. There are many big, huge challenges. So togetherness is the way. We have to help each other in different regions. Like I said before, you're doing something here in ASEAN, it will affect something in the Southeast Asia, will affect something in Central Asia, in South Asia, in Timor-Leste, affect everywhere. So think globally, but you have to act locally. And I like this one. Maybe I just have to, this is one way for the restoration. And I think it's very good to restore your soils. This is like Kiss the Ground. You can go to that link and take a look. I think it's very, very good idea of doing carbon restoration. I mean, like take carbon back to the soil. And last but not least, this is just like what's saying here. Like I talked to someone about climate change, and they told me sooner or later we will invest a machine that can capture carbon from the atmosphere in an efficient way. I told them that it already exists and it's called a tree. So please help restore, plant more trees. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Chai. It was a very inspirational talk, and thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for that. Unfortunately, we don't have any time left for any questions, but if you have questions, and we saw some questions passing by in the Q&A box, you can email them to the email which will be sent to you in the chat box, and we will follow up with you. I would also take this chance to thank everyone for their great insights on restoring land for climate change adaptations and mitigation. I would like to thank our speakers for their wonderful presentations and the knowledge they have brought today. And I would also like to thank our interpreter, who has been doing a live interpretation all along into Russian. And also, last but not least, I would also like to thank the AFOCO, the C4A-CRAF, and the Global Evergreening Alliance teams for making this webinar possible. Thank you very much. 1 minute over time, so this is it. Thank you all very much, and looking forward to seeing you all in our next webinar series. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
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 Bye bye. Thank you.